Purdue University put my apparatus in a lab and tested it. True story. The story wasn't written that way. I didn't think that was ever going to happen. I started off with a knee problem, with a serious problem that I had to leave the NBA for. This was a place I had worked my entire life to get to that height of professional basketball, and had to walk away due to my knees were not working the way they were supposed to. It's a lot of pain and discomfort. When I walked away, I always knew that I was going to try to make a comeback, but I needed to get some comfort in my knees. I needed to be able to move comfortably. One thing that I did recognize through all of the rehab with Dr. Dan Dyrick and others is that there were moments where I felt great, particularly when the muscle was fully loaded. The problem was the muscle would deflate so fast when I went out on the basketball court and got in certain positions. And when I ended up walking away, my whole thought process was that one thing. I had days where I felt like myself, and there were days where I felt horrible. There were unpredictable days of pain with movements. That, when you have unpredictable pain, when you're moving and you don't know when you're going to get a stabbing feeling, it just messes up everything for you. So my thing was, how can I fire the muscle at a 90-degree angle? So the angle where I am right now, sitting in a chair, like a chair, that's a 90-degree angle. And you basketball players know, if you played ball before, the defensive stance, you're getting down almost like you're sitting in a chair. I couldn't stay comfortably in that position. And when chasing guards, chasing Reggie in practice and whatnot, getting low and staying in that position is a big deal, especially for me, super tall, 7 foot, 6'11", 7 foot, and having to get down and run with those guys is a big deal, and stand low and super athletic. So getting down in that angle was a problem. My creative mind went to, how can I keep the muscles loaded at a 90-degree angle? That was the whole thing that was in my mind the entire time while I was gone, when I left the NBA. And literally, no lie, I think 5 minutes, my brain just drew this thing up in my head, right? This apparatus. I went to the store, corner store, ankle braces, weight belt, duct tape, a couple bands. Back then, I think Sports Authority was a thing, so I was in there getting bands and whatnot. And I put this thing together in less than an hour total max. Put it on, and lo and behold, it was functioning. It was doing some of the things that I had in my mind that I wanted it to do, definitely loading at the 90-degree angle. So I would go out and just play with it, move around on the court. And I didn't really notice at the time, even though I should have, but it had unloaded. It took a lot of pressure away from my knees too, so I can move a lot freely and a lot comfortably, but my legs were burning at that 90-degree angle, which I needed. I needed more stamina at the 90-degree angle, right? And, this became a thing, and people would see me and ask what it is. And I got a couple of them made. I would make them myself and give them to some of my buddies that were coaches and that were, running gyms. And I would ask them to put it on other people, just see what they say. And they would put it on older folks, and they would come back saying, hey, this helped my back, this helped my sciatic nerve, this helped my knees. I'm like, I didn't design it to help anybody's back or any of that stuff. I didn't know it was doing all of that stuff. And even the chiropractors, I remember going to a chiropractic conference, and they were like, you don't know what you have, young fella. You figured something out that we've been trying to figure out. I would say I'm not as smart as they are, but okay. So I took this thing over to Purdue University. There was a professor there by the name of Eric Newman, and he wanted to take it on and do a biomechanical analysis. I didn't know what that was at the time, but I said, okay. He went in and they did a bunch of research, took a little bit, probably took a month or two, and came back and the paper that he showed me, it looked like a bunch of math jargon. Um, but lo and behold, at the end of the day, all the formulas came back showing that um, it was reducing pressure from across the front of the knee, which is what I was feeling and some of the people that tried the device were feeling too. So that made sense. It was also providing a posterior pelvic tilt, which I didn't know at the time. That was removing pressure from the lower lumbar. So that was the reason it was helping people with their backs. But also from a overcompensation standpoint, it was forcing you to get in your correct gait, which is good as well. So it was doing a lot of stuff that I didn't even know at the time, right? Which was pretty cool. So, I went full-fledged in my training with the device just to get myself together, and it was helping me a whole lot. So much so that, I got so bold to the point that I said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and, get back on the court. I feel that good. And I put a call into Donnie Walsh in New York. He said if I was ever, thinking about coming back, to make sure he's the first one I called. So I called him, ended up jumping on a plane on the team plane in New Orleans, and went up to New York. And while I was in New York, they did a physical. They did, all of these tests and measurements on my lower extremity. And lo and behold, I ended up having the strongest lower extremity on that team at the time, which was also, thanks to the device and the work that was being put in. I played the entire time there, my entire time there, without any issues. But the way I approached the game had to be different. I couldn't just go out there and just start playing. There was some preparation. I had learned a lot of strategic tactics to make sure that my body was preloaded, to make sure my knees were preloaded, my hamstring was really released, that it wasn't applying any pressure on my knees. Everything had to be working right. And then when I did go out and play, when I would get taken out the game, I had to go to the side and continue some of that stuff. Hamstring would get tight. I have to loosen it up, because if it's tight, it's going to put pressure on my knee, close the gap, and that knee will be scraping because there's no cartilage. So it took me some time while I was off to understand all of these things and understand how to get through a full game or get through my time on a court comfortably. So I was able to do that as well, which was, very cool. And through that whole experience, I was offered a second year deal with the Knicks. And at that time, my mind was already elsewhere. And I had something that I felt like God gave me to help other people. And being able to help other people is a big deal. It's a big responsibility. So that's what I've been doing with my time at this point. And really teaching and getting people to understand how important pressure is when it comes down to the knee. It's not always replacement. That's not always the answer, but sometimes it is, right? And whether you're going to get a replacement or not, you should always have your lower extremity the strongest that it could possibly be. And if you're walking around with no cartilage, or if your cartilage is starting to wear out, you definitely need to have the tactics and some strategies that you can go to keep yourself from overcompensating, to also make sure that you can always get to the joint protecting muscle, because once you start having pain, muscles shrink off into atrophy, soft tissue, scar tissue, all these things get in the way of a good muscle contraction. And when you go and try to exercise, you'll find that everything that you do causes pain on the knee, right? You try to walk, you try to jog, you try to do a leg extension, leg press, anything that you do mobility-wise on the knee causes pain directly on the knee. And a lot of times that, there's just one or two levers that you can pull to release that, to allow you to get to the muscle. That's one of the minor things, major things that a lot of people don't know, that I found out and that I've been teaching over the last, years here. But yeah, that's my story of the device. and how it came to be. Now there's what was interesting, there's other devices that look similar, but they don't function as the same way mine does, right? And mine came strictly from my brain. Okay, so look, that's my story. This is what I do today, as far as helping my knees and helping other people's knees. I still do the same thing. I wear the device not as often as I used to because I don't need to. My legs are strong enough and I know what I'm doing. But for people who are, having knee problems or working with, my company, my programs, they have to start off definitely unloading with the device. Okay. So what I've done today, if you're having knee problems, you want to, you want more information, you want, more help or more insight, I put together a 45-minute training. In that training, it kind of walks you through and gives you an overview of how I do my thing, how I help others, and the strategies that I've created over the years. I actually unveil some of those things. There's also a super cool stretch that I'll show you that if you do it correctly, it's going to pull a lot of pressure off of your knees today. And if you're bone on bone, less pressure means less pain. So if you're on Instagram, go ahead. You can look at my bio. There should be a link there that'll get you over to the training. If you're on YouTube, you can look below this video. Go ahead and click the link. That'll get you over to the 45-minute training. Sit through the whole thing. Invest in your knee. Invest time in your knees if you're really serious about getting better. Okay? So hopefully this helps. See you next time.